I think we can all find something in our days, more than one thing that we're grateful for. And it usually is the small stuff. It's not the big stuff. So if people live over there and are engaging in those behaviors to get through these next 2, 3, 6 months, whatever, then I feel like, wow, we collectively are going to have a whole bunch of people who have learned the definition of resiliency. And if we have that kind of population rolling forward, amazing.
You're listening to My Evolved Life, a podcast that simplifies health and fitness and helps you maximize your life. My name is Vuna Nguyen, and I'm the creator of the Evolution Training System. We're so lucky to be living in the information age, meaning it's easier than ever to access information and find answers to any questions you may have. But isn't it confusing when you read information that's conflicting, or worse yet, just sounds wrong? I'll be sitting down with industry professionals to give you clarity and leave you with tangible actions you can take immediately to improve your physical, mental, and psychological health. Today, we welcome back Cinder Smith, registered psychologist. I first had you on the show sometime in November, December, I believe, and we had you again in the first couple of weeks of COVID. Now we are heading towards the 7th week of the pandemic. The biggest effect for most of us being that we're locked inside, we're being asked to self-isolate, quarantine. So I'm curious, what are your biggest observations over the course of the past 7 weeks? And how has that really evolved since the last time we talked, which was about 5 weeks ago?
Yeah, okay. So I would say, and I've kept it like a little journal actually for myself and for just watching the trends and the transitions that people have gone through. And so I'd say with week 1 and week 2, it was a little bit of I don't want to say happy time, but everybody was more, oh, we're working from home, no big deal, this is kind of fun. Not really, I think, wrapping their head around the seriousness of it. Week 3 and 4, people are kind of settling in a little bit more. Teachers are giving some Zoom classroom times with students. People have really transitioned working from home. Week 5 was like, I described it like this weird week. It was just really uncomfortable. I felt like people's feelings were starting to really evolve into more fear, more anxiety, more panic. And then last week, week 6, was lots of emotion, lots of people coming in with major fears, major anxieties, and some of them being extremely real in terms of money. Some people have been having lost their jobs, and really just worried about what's next kind of thing. So last week was pretty heavy, and I found myself even to be pretty bagged at the end of my workday. And that's a little bit unusual. I'm going to tell you why. I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and I said, there's parts of my work that, because sometimes people say to me like, oh, how do you do what you do? It must be so hard. Well, yes, sometimes it is, but other times I get to see people change and transition and better themselves and really do some soulful work, and right before my eyes, I can see that when they come for follow-up. But last week was just hard after hard after hard after hard. Like there wasn't a lot of people coming in like that. So I found myself feeling really, really drained by the end of it. So I see it evolving into, now we're getting real. We're getting more seriousness happening, and people seeing that we're here for a little while. So, yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I respect your profession so much, because I can imagine that, as good as you are at separating your emotions from theirs, if
Yeah.
you're an empath at whatsoever, you like, what choice do you have but to absorb that emotion that they feel, right? And
Yeah,
if it is a residual and a constant negative energy, patient or client after client, how can you not be kind of pulled down with it, right?
100%.
So at the end of that workday, when you're just so drained and exhausted, and you're feeling that residual emotion from your clients, what do you do to lift yourself up so that you're not impacting your family, your husband, and your kids?
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of knew that that Friday was going to be a hard day. Thursday was, but Friday was harder.
Mm-hmm.
And I had already had lined up a Zoom date with some friends to talk and drink some wine and you know, that WhatsApp or house party
House
app.
party.
Yeah, and we played heads up, and I needed to laugh, and I told all of them that. I said, first 5 to 10 minutes of our Zoom chat, unload, get it out, what's up, how's everyone feeling, but then we're going to move along, because I was like, I need this.
Yeah.
So we had about a 2.5 hour visit and just laughed, and yeah, it was exactly what I needed, and then followed by a really good sleep.
Yeah, I think that's so much in alignment with what I know your mantra to be, right? Just find fun, find laughter, and
Lightness.
it's so important right now.
Yeah,
I know we all talk about this, and it's almost getting old to a degree. Yes, there is so much uncertainty right now, right? And that's
yeah,
the biggest concern. If we had a predicted end date to this, I think people could cope a little bit better.
I agree.
But now 7 weeks in, we're not necessarily any further than we were at 1 week or 2 weeks in. And I
Yeah,
think as the weeks go on, it's just going to get more and more severe. The anxiety, the stress level is going to go up and up, right? And of course, as time
definitely.
drags on, people's financial situations also gets worse and worse, assuming that they've lost their jobs or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So one of the real curious things about me, again, going on that uncertainty, is the information that's being, and this is just my opinion, but I find
Yeah,
that the information being put out there isn't consistent, and
yeah.
that contributes to that uncertainty, right?
Oh,
So
completely. People don't know what to
masks,
listen to.
yeah, that's exactly it, right? Masks,
Yeah.
wear them or not. Like within the first couple of weeks, it was
Mm-hmm.
they don't really help. But
Mm-hmm.
now it sounds like the messaging is more okay. If you wear them, it'll protect you from so and so. But there's still no definitive answer. And in my opinion, even if they don't have a definitive yes or no, I would just say just enforce it.
Yeah,
Just say that yes, you know what? To the best of our knowledge, if you wear a mask, it will help. Give the people some sort of certainty. People are just looking to be
yeah.
told what to do,
Oh, they're hungry
right?
for it.
And the anecdote that I like to use right now, I like to use my mother as a great example of this,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So there are some loose guidelines around produce because they may be potential carriers of the virus.
Yeah.
So hearing that and not having some strict guidelines around it, she doesn't know any better. Every time she comes back from Costco or Superstore, wherever she may go, she will literally scrub down every single apple, every single banana, one by one. And now
Right.
she has a fear of going shopping because she doesn't want to put in that extra 2 hours to clean that, right?
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts there? And how do our behavior patterns change when we come out of COVID?
Yeah. Oh boy. How did they change? I was just talking about this literally last night with a friend about that. That what do I think? What is it going to look like when we're on the other side of this? Oh, you know that I'm an optimist by nature, but there's a part of me that's worried that people are going to be really fearful, judgmental, and angry, because I don't know, as soon as things kind of loosen or soften a little bit, I think they're still going to have that scarcity mentality and that fear mentality, because everyone's being, well, not everyone, but we're being invited to be conditioned for those ways of thinking and being right now and doing. Having said that, fear and anxiety breed fear and anxiety. And when we watch somebody else engage in behaviors that are, I'm going to air quote, protective in nature in their mind, we feel the need to do that same thing, or then some. Um, I think that COVID is going to, not I think, I know I can see it right now before my eyes, is breeding more and more obsessive compulsive disorders in people, hands down. Which is a lot of that. Obsessive compulsive disorder says this: I have an obsession, so I have to have the cognitive thought of I need to do X or else. That's, I'm putting it very loosely. So to have the thought and then to have the behavior, the doing, the compulsion. So that's the execution. I feel like every single piece of produce that comes in my house is dirty and has COVID, and therefore I have to excessively wash every single thing in there. So and through time and practice and repetition, repeat, people really now associate those two things, which just it just solidifies that pattern of behavior even further. So yeah, I just see I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and I know I've told you before, Brene Brown is just one of my favorites,
Mm-hmm.
and she had a phrase that she used that I loved, because I've been telling people, limit your social media intake and limit your news consumption, period, and be picky about who you're going to listen to. Please, for the love of God, don't listen to politicians for health advice.
Yeah.
That's my one political statement, period. But someone like Hinshaw, who she is just educated and grounded, and she knows what she's talking about. And her delivery usually comes from a place of just calm and even maybe a little sense of hopefulness. And so listen to her. Anyways, coming back to Brene, she said news consumption is like gasoline on an anxiety fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well said. Yes, because you watch something and then you weren't thinking about that thing before, but you are now. And then you find yourself going down, crazy rabbit holes unnecessarily. So that, again, I'm coming back to limiting your social media and news intake, period. It doesn't need to be on the background in your house all day, every day. Please don't. That's not a good idea.
At the risk of saying something potentially controversial, and I may offend some people, but
That's why we're
this is,
friends.
yeah, in regards to listening to politicians, I mean, they're well advised, and I'm sure they have there's some merit to what they're saying because they are advised by doctors and what have you. But for those people who are, for example, hearing what Trump is saying and thinking that Lysol, like drinking the Lysol liquid or whatever it is, like, I'm sorry, guys. If you hear that and you think that that is valid or factual,
Right.
life is much harder than what we're going through right now, right?
Right.
I don't want to say that, but when I heard that, first of all, I don't actually think he was serious. Like, it didn't sound like he didn't have that serious tone behind him. But even
Yeah.
if he were, I'm sorry, I'm just not listening to that crap. It's just
No,
it's tough.
totally.
Um,
With all of his medical degrees that he has.
yeah, yeah. The fact that Lysol had to put out a disclaimer, that just kind of shows you where we are as a people. But that also emphasizes the fact that people are really just looking for direction. They don't know any better. They're
Yeah,
looking for that guidance, right?
I know.
Um,
That's true.
Now going back to the timeline, and if you feel like you don't want to speak to this or you don't have the answers for this, that's fine. But we're speaking strictly hypotheticals here.
Yeah.
So at 2 weeks, you had a certain vision of the status quo. Okay, what it looked like then. You have a pretty good vision of what it looks like now. So 5 weeks later, week 7,
Yeah.
let's assume, and I think this is a fairly good assumption now that we just had the Stampede being canceled. Looks like a lot of things are being canceled, projecting like 3-4 months forward. Chances
Yeah.
are we're not going to get back to any form of normalcy, the new normalcy, potentially
Right.
for another 3, maybe 6 months.
Totally. Yeah.
How do you project what you're seeing now? Project that forward. What are
Yeah.
people going to be like down the road? Let's call it 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, and this is my observation and my opinion, both professionally and personally, is I'm going to kind of break it down to two ways of getting on the other side of this beast, because again, it's not an if, it's a when. We will get on the other side of it, period. People can and are doing it, let's say, number one or way of dealing with this right now. Um, Watching too much news and social media, having increased panic and worry and anxiety, socially isolating, which is very different than social distancing. I'll come back to that. Um, and not maintaining a good, healthy routine with sleep, eating, exercise, drinking water, and having some form of social connection. So I'm seeing people do stuff like that over there. And some of that does also include increased alcohol consumption, increased illicit drug use, or abusing their pharmacology medications, um, increased in abusive behavior in homes. Domestic violence is on the rise. And I gotta say it, and I gotta put it out there, and suicide for sure. That is what is happening. I'm kind of a tell it like it is person. So there's one way. Number two way of dealing with this is stay informed, watch enough social media and news to satiate that and get off. When I say that, like Hinshaw for 15 minutes, 6 o'clock news, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Second is maintaining really good routines, sleep, all of those things. Getting up at the same time every day, going to bed at the same time every day, shower, eat your breakfast, stop work for lunch, get outside a little bit every day, find a way to connect with your family and your friends. And then other stuff like learn a new hobby, learn a language that you've been putting off for a long time, or just doing something new and something fun. And reminding yourself that we are going to be okay. We will get through this. And we talked about it before, having gratitude. I think we can all find something in our days, more than one thing that we're grateful for.
Yeah.
And it usually is the small stuff, it's not the big stuff. So if people live over there and are engaging in those behaviors to get through these next 2, 3, 6 months, whatever, then I feel like, wow, you're going to have, we collectively are going to have a whole bunch of people who have learned the definition of resiliency. And if we have that kind of population rolling forward, amazing, especially with our kids. I know I kind of mentioned that last time, but I'm coming back to it. Like, what are you as parents out there doing to role model good behaviors for your kids? Because they are our next generation. And if you're role modeling that panic and instilling fear and those kinds of things, please find a way to not do that. Panic in private, but not in public in front of them. Um, and remember that, yeah, they're watching when you don't think that they're watching you. And so be careful about what things you're instilling in their little minds and in their little worlds. Their worlds are smaller than ours, and they are now observing us more and more and more. And so being really cautious about what you're saying to your spouses about what's going on and how you're responding and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I see this could kind of go one of two ways, is what I'm getting at. And one of the things I've been talking about with every single person that I'm working with in my practice is, how can you be your best self during this really, really hard, uncertain time? What does that look like? And everyone's is different, but some people like to write it out, or we'll just talk it out. But that's really what I've been trying to kind of refocus or shift and get people's mindsets a little bit over there.
I think one of the difficulties, though, is that we will always, as a people, again, collective we, will fall back on old habits. Well, we're going to fall back onto what we're used to, right? So if we
Yes.
are habitually used to living in a fight or flight mode, living in fear, this is only
Yeah.
going to exacerbate the issue, right?
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying, in terms of communication in front of kids or with kids or whatever, you want to be extremely conscious of the things that you say.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think that a lot of people are very much on edge right now. And when
Yeah.
you're on edge, you do things on impulse. Like
Oh,
it's not a
completely.
controlled,
Yes.
decisive or decision rather, but you just do it because it's a snap judgment, right?
Reactive.
Do you see a lot of that?
Absolutely. Way more impatience and impulsivity for sure. Anger is right there. And the thing about anger underneath it is just fear and hurt and pain. Anger is just what people project. Um, but yeah, I'm definitely seeing people having a lot more of a reaction to things. And I think we talked about this in our very first session
Hmm.
together, the difference between responsive or sorry, reacting and being responsive. Reaction requires very little thought, if any. When we react to something, we're just going on almost sheer emotion and react to an emotion behaviorally. Whereas a response requires you to just pause, like, what is this feeling? Check in with yourself. Why am I feeling this way? What's this all about? And get in your head a little bit about it. It's like, get curious about, what am I scared of right now? What did I watch or listen to or read, or what got me feeling really triggered right now? So that you can label it and put meaning to it. And it doesn't always mean that that worry or that anxiety goes away. It usually doesn't go away, but you can dissipate it a little bit. So when we're in this really serious, uncertain time, finding ways to think about it differently is huge. It is not easy. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still find myself like, oh, okay, no, I don't need to think that like that. How can I regroup and have a different perspective about this thing or the thing that I was worried about or something like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I mean, if you can find, or if I can find a positive in all of this, it's really the fact that if you had some underlying issues or problems that you didn't know about, they'll really come to the forefront.
Oh,
So, right?
they definitely
Whether
are.
it's financially or relationally, I think,
Yes.
the last time we talked, you kind of, we kind of joked about how, um, there are going to be some divorces or some breakups as a
Yeah.
result of this. And chances are, I don't think it's this situation itself that is creating that result, but these
Correct.
are underlying issues. That relationship already had issues to begin with, and this just really brought it out to the forefront. And likewise, financially, right? Do you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I've been saying that this is bringing out a whole lot of, well, let me say it this way. You know how I am with language, it's so big.
Yeah.
This is bringing out opportunities to look at your dark spots and do some healing. Some people aren't going to do that. They're going to say, they're going to deny it, repress it, and pretend that those things aren't happening or aren't coming up and they're not theirs. And there are other people who are, they are doing that and they're saying, Cinder, I've noticed this about myself, and I know that this has been a trend or a pattern in my life, and I gotta look at it and I gotta do some work around it. So yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of both of those things, but definitely this whole thing is bringing out opportunities to look at it.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. You had alluded to there's an increase in domestic violence, or
Yes.
potentially an increase in domestic violence, and I think that anger and violence is not a an appropriate response or not a natural response. So if this situation is bringing that side of you out, that does indicate that you have an underlying issue with anger that
Yes.
may need to be addressed. If not now, then once we get out of this. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. Oh, I agree 100%. Yeah. And I can qualify a little bit that there that statistic, I don't know the exact number, but that yes, increased domestic violence here in Calgary, because I have uh, a couple of friends in my life who are police officers, and and yeah, an increase in suicides in the last 3 weeks for sure.
So I know you are on some, you're a part of associations for
Yep.
psychology. What is the collective thought process, or not thought process, but where are you guys, like, where are you guys at? Like, are you guys implementing new strategies? Are you guys communicating about it differently? Like, what's the
Yeah.
latest and greatest? I know you guys are adapting very, very quickly.
Yeah, kind of weekly. And so what we've started to do, a few of us psychologists who are in private practice, is talk about what what is post pandemic going to look like, because right now mental health is everywhere. I don't care who you are in this world, there's varying degrees of it happening right now. But we're kind of talking about what is this going to look like when we come on the other side of it. And so we wrote down a list of those things and are being invited or encouraged um, to pick one that we want to pick, a diagnosis that we want to kind of specialize in and get more educated or tooled up, I guess I would say,
Mm-hmm.
for when this is over. And the list of diagnoses that we came up with were addiction, obesity, um, increased problems with relationships, marriages, separation, divorces, um, an increase in obsessive compulsive disorder. Um, what was the other one we thought of? I can't remember right now, but
That's
yeah.
okay.
So knowing that we're, when we get on the other side of this, those are going to be like on the rise for sure. How are we going to collectively treat the influx of those in practice? So I got to give kudos to the College of Alberta Psychologists, as well as Psychology Association of Alberta, for really getting us as psychologists, our minds forward thinking about not just helping people right now while we're in it, which is really important, but we are forecasting that this is going to be a really big deal when we get on the other side of it.
So going back to what you do then as a psychologist, this is actually a great segue into a question that I wanted to ask you.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, you deal with so much day to day, almost to the extent, and I'm making an assumption here, so correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but because you deal so closely and so emotionally with your clients, you may even feel responsible for them to some degree, right? Responsible for their success coming out of COVID. So
Yes.
that puts a lot of pressure on you as a
Yep.
professional. So you've used the word routine, and people talk about routine quite a bit. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume that it's your routine that's keeping you very, very
Yeah.
rational,
Yeah.
getting you through this in a more positive, or as positive a manner as possible.
Yes.
So let's talk about your routine, right?
Yep.
The reason I want to talk about that is I think it's great for professionals to talk about, or to put things into context, right? So rather than just say, find a routine, but no, this is my routine. This is what I do on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
And I think it provides that context, makes it a lot easier for people to understand what
For
they
sure.
should be doing, what they need to be doing.
Yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to come back to your comment about like uh, that sense of responsibility for my clients and their well-being and how they're doing. Way back when I was a baby psychologist, early days, I have a beautiful, wonderful human, and she's also a psychologist in practice. Um, Give me a phrase which to this day I still remind myself of, and it's this: care, but don't carry. And so it's important for me to care about the people that I treat. Of course I do. That's why I'm here. That's why I
Hmm.
do it. But I can't carry their feelings because they're not mine. They're theirs. And I can't carry their hurts, because if I hijack their hurts or their feelings, I hijack their opportunity to heal from it. That makes sense. So I always come back to care but don't carry. So yeah, which really, really helps me sometimes when I'm feeling so
Fair.
sad for somebody else and what they're going through, and trying to give them tools to manage as best I can. So um and also very, very specifically, and then I'll jump into my routine.
Yeah.
When I leave a session or I leave my office, I am very literal about switching hats. And I'll tell you exactly what it looks like. I switch off all of the lights in my office and my lamps. And I've got this cool little fountain, water fountain. Um, I turn off my computer, put it in my bag, and then I lock up. And I'm very intentional about all of those things. I walk to my vehicle, I get in my car, and my commute home from the office to home. Well, now it's not nearly as much traffic, but about a half an hour, but 20 minutes. And I use that and listen to some of my favorite music. And that's my transition from psychologist hat to now I'm going to be home and I'm going to be a mom and I'm going to be a wife and I'm going to be a friend and a daughter and a neighbor and all of those other things. And the first, okay, maybe not the first, second thing I do once I walk in the door and greet everybody is I change. I literally get out of my work clothes. It's kind of like getting out of your uniform. And for me, it really helps to switch out of that hat and then do my other life. And because when I do that, I take the time to fuel myself back up so that I can saddle up and go do another difficult day the next day. So, what does it look like?
Sorry,
Day
I have before you talk about your routine, I have to say that that's amazing. Like that is a very conscious decision that you're making to
yeah,
switch those hats, right?
yeah,
And because it's a conscious decision, you put the proper steps in place. This is what I do. Okay, I get
yeah,
in my car, I turn on the music. I
yeah,
get home, I change. Like, and that's that, right? You
totally.
don't leave it up to chance,
Yeah.
right?
And it's funny, like if my little humans were here, they would if you interviewed them,
Yeah,
they would say, what is this? What's the first thing that mom does when she walks in the door? Literally, they would say that. So
great.
yeah. Okay, so I wake up ish same time every day between 8 and 8:30, quarter to 9, depending on the kids too. I'll come downstairs and I'll make a cup of coffee, and usually I go back upstairs into our bed and drink my coffee in there, and I don't look at my phone. I don't have anything on. I just kind of sit there for not very long, like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and just it's kind of my version of meditating, but I'm not really meditating. I'm just
Sure.
well, maybe in meditation with my coffee. There's a reason why my shirt says drink coffee. And then once I'm done that, I'll come downstairs and have some breakfast. Breakfast, usually, if I get down to brass tacks, will be some Greek yogurt and berries and granola, or I'm a big fan of scrambled eggs. Then I'll usually either, it depends on my day. Either I'll work out right away and then get ready to go into the office, or sometimes I just get ready and I go into the office and then work out later on in my day. But there's always some form of exercise, especially right now. I will openly admit for one sec that prior to COVID, I did not work out every day. I worked out about 4 or 5 times per week. But right now, I just made a commitment to myself. I'm like, you know what? No, every single day, something, whether it's going for a walk, running on the treadmill, doing a bar class, riding bikes, which now we can do, but some form of exercise every single day. So that's what else I'm doing.
Hmm.
And then in and around dinner time, depending on if I'm going to make dinner or if he's going to make dinner, what if he's making dinner, I'm probably hanging out with the kids and doing something with them, or if I'm making dinner, vice versa. We've gotten into this fun new habit of watching Family Feud together, and the kids love it. So we'll either have that on like while dinner's being made or while we're eating, but we'll sit down all together and have dinner together, and and oftentimes we will talk about like what was your best thing in the day today, like what was the awesome thing that happened that you want to share with everybody. And then we'll finish and clean up, bath or shower for the kids. And what we've gotten in a habit of with them is all 5 of us sitting down and watching a little bit of a movie together before bed. And it's not long; it's like 20 minutes or something like that. And we've I've told you before, I've watched Frozen 2 more times than I can count in 7 weeks. But yeah, so we'll watch a little bit of a movie, we'll put them to bed, and then after that, Jeff and I will sit down and oftentimes we'll shut off the TV and put our phones away and just sit and visit. Sometimes we'll have a beer or a glass of wine together and just kind of, how was your day? What are you up? Where are you at? And just kind of other stuff, not really talking anything about COVID. And then we go to bed. So and literally that's kind of exactly my day. After I'm done with you, I have a virtual online class that I signed up for that I'm going to do. I have a little bit of work I have to do today. We're going to get outside because it's beautiful out today. I'm making stuffed peppers for dinner tonight. Yeah, so that's kind of a day in the life right now.
So the beauty in that, and the beauty in sharing your routine is, I care less about the specific things that you listed out, but more about the general idea that everything that you listed out is really quite simple.
Yeah,
They're very, very small things. You didn't list anything that is elusive or grand. It's spending an extra 5-10 minutes in bed and just really
yeah,
thinking about things, right? Thinking about
yeah,
your day, you know, what lies ahead. And
yeah,
then a little bit of breakfast. You're talking about coffee, spending some
yeah,
time with your kids.
yeah,
Very, very small things. And that probably goes back to the gratitude that we've been talking about so
yeah,
much, right?
yeah,
And what I love about routine is that it simply provides a structure,
yeah,
but it can be very, very flexible, right? So
totally.
if one day, say you're in your routine, you have 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, but
Yeah,
this particular morning you're a little bit under pressure and you have 2 minutes,
right.
or you actually have a little bit more time today and you want to take 15, that is available to you. That's where the flexibility comes in, right? It's
Yeah,
not meant to be this rigid structure. It just creates the framework, the
a
structure,
framework.
right?
I like that. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I love that. And the in hearing that, and I really want to emphasize to those who are listening, it's that, you know what, I pride myself on having a very good routine. My routine looks nothing like yours,
Right.
right? So it's gonna differ from person to person,
Yes,
right?
totally.
It's
Yep.
just the fact is, you just need to have something there that you can fall back on, right? So
Yeah.
you don't default to that social media or whatever, right? Just
Yes.
that framework.
Definitely. Yep.
So it sounds like you and I, we're very much in alignment when it comes to the external stimuli, what we're absorbing, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
we're both limiting our social media. I think the thing is, both inside and outside of COVID or this pandemic, we're not big on social media anyways,
Totally.
but still,
Yeah.
we are cautious of what we're taking in on social media and what we're taking on in terms of the news,
Yeah.
and we replace that with influential figures, right? So
Yeah.
you've referenced Brene Brown more than once,
Yeah.
and for me, it's a an Eric Thomas, it's a Les Brown, who are motivational speakers
Yeah.
on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the common sayings is, you are the average of the five people closest to
Yes.
you, right?
I
And I
love
think
that.
sometimes people get into the confusion that, oh, well, you know, there really aren't any people in my immediate circle. I don't know where to find them. Do I network? How do I find these uplifting people that I can be influenced by?
Right.
And I tell a lot of my customers, my clients, that these people don't have to be physical.
Right.
Find somebody whose message resonates with you, whether physical or virtual. And
Yeah.
especially nowadays with technology, it's so easy to find those virtual figures.
Definitely.
Just find them and fill your day with their messages, right?
Yes.
I think you're in agreement with that.
Oh, 100%. I love that. I love the reference because I very much believe that you are like or influenced by the five people you surround yourself with the most. And yeah, in all of this, so Brene Brown has been putting up weekly podcasts about COVID and how people are responding to it. And so, yeah, I've been listening to her and a few others. Mark Brackett is another really good one. But it is so true. It's like what you absorb and what you surround yourself with, who you surround yourself with, can and does play such a big role in your attitude and in your perspective on things. And if so, yeah, if you're listening to too much news or you're listening to a lot of fear and anxiety inducing podcasts, then no wonder you're feeling that way. Or if you're talking to a neighbor or friends who they have really, really elevated levels of stress and anxiety right now too, you're going to absorb that. So I'm not saying distance yourself from them or don't, but limit it and bring some of the other health and comfort into your life and into what you're listening to and who you're talking to and that sort of thing. So yeah, it plays such a big role what you surround yourself with and who you surround yourself with right now.
Absolutely. And for myself personally, I've not always carried this positive energy. I think
Yeah.
I'm fairly positive overall. In
Yeah.
fact, there was a point in my life where I carried a ton of negative energy,
Yeah.
and that was a result of being of leaving myself and accepting myself in environments of negativity, being around negative people,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, what that meant through the course of my life is I've had to um, cut certain people out of my life permanently.
Yeah.
And also on the more conscious side of things, I also realized that there were points in my life where I was the negative energy and was
Yeah.
pulling other people down. And out
Right.
of sheer responsibility, I pulled myself back from them. And
Right.
then when I was ready, when I was in a better place, I represented myself to
Yeah.
them and reintroduced myself to that relationship.
Yep.
And I think that's just the responsible thing to do. But
Yep.
yeah, really, really understanding that what you absorb on a day-to-day basis, hourly basis, minute by minute basis is going to be reflected in your moods, your behaviors, right?
100%. Yep. Yep.
So I am very, very curious then when it comes to your kids now. Okay, so your kids, you have
So
three.
they're soon to be 11, soon to be 8, and soon to be 5.
Right. So we've talked about this a little bit in our first podcast, but just communicating with children in general. You have three kids of fairly different age
Yeah.
ranges.
Yep.
Do you communicate with them collectively, or do you communicate with them independently and in different ways, depending on their age?
About this?
About this, yes.
Both. We do both. Independently, or sorry, let me say collectively first. Just kind of generally, if a question comes up, like, are we allowed to go swimming yet? Or are we allowed to, when are we going to be allowed to go to the playgrounds again? Or things like that. We'll just have a collective conversation. And then occasionally, kind of individually, if we get asked a question and yeah, have to respond to it in age appropriate ways. But I would say both, but overall probably more collectively, and we keep it high level, just enough information to satiate their little minds, and then we move along to whatever else we're doing that day.
And are your kids able to connect with their peers via Zoom or
Yeah,
some
we're
other?
doing a little bit of that, like Zoom and stuff. But man, my heart goes out to the families who have only one child during this, because that's got to be hard. Like the three of them, they can play and they do, and we do stuff with them, and it's great, especially their social aspect of it. But I really feel for families who have just one child and trying to keep them entertained, and right now it would be really, really hard.
Yeah. Um, I'm just gonna take a quick deviation.
That's okay.
We've referenced the notion or the concept of the phoenix several times,
Yes.
and when you and I were having a conversation earlier in the week, you made a reference to a quote that you really liked, and I was hoping that you could quickly read that, and it looks like you jumped
Got
right
it.
for that book.
Yes. Okay. So I love this, and I'm going to read it, and I want people to really hear it, because it kind of is coming back to my own belief about these two ways of getting through these next few months. So again, I'll tell people it's called Broken Open, and it's by Elizabeth Lesser. And here's what I'm going to read. I am fascinated by what it takes to stay awake in difficult times. I marvel at what we all do in times of transition, how we resist and how we surrender, how we stay stuck, and how we grow. Since my first major broken open experience, which was my divorce, I have been I have been an observer and a confidant of others as they engage with the forces of their own suffering. I have made note of how fiasco and failure visit each one of us, as if they are written into the job description of being a human. I have seen people crumble in times of trouble, lose their spirit, and never fully recover. I've seen others protect themselves fiercely from any kind of change until they're living a half life, safe yet stunted. But I have also seen another way to deal with a fearful change or a painful loss. I call this other way the phoenix process, named perfectly for the mythical phoenix bird who remains awake through the fires of change, rises from the ashes of death, and is reborn into the most vibrant and enlightened version of themselves. I describe the phoenix process later in part 2 of the book, but for now, we need only to understand it as an alternate way, as an alternate to going back to sleep. I love it. Like, I just love it that there's two ways of getting through this. And one is to stay over there and be stunted and safe. And two is dig your heels in, sit tight, be firm, be strong, and find a way to get through it in a really, really healthy way. Is that easy? Not at all. Is it doable? Yes. And when someone can make that commitment to themselves that, you know what, and part of that is sometimes just say it out loud, like, today I'm scared, today I'm fearful, I gotta find a way to feel it and heal it and move through it. And the more you do stuff like that, the better you get at it. The thing about hard emotions is anyone can get better at managing them. Practice, repetition, repeat. You don't just magically start to be okay with your anxiety. It's you pick it and you choose to say, I'm not going to let it railroad me today. I didn't want it to show up this early in my day, but my anxiety is here and I need to just be with it for a little bit and trust that it doesn't have to railroad my entire day. Just be with it for a little while and then get out of your house. My phrase I've told you before, to get out of your head, get out of your house. Sometimes you just need to switch gears and do stuff like that. So, Phoenix process, like, we all have this opportunity to be that, to do that, even though it's super hard.
That quote
Amazing.
it is so appropriate to the times now.
Totally.
The term itself, the phoenix process, yeah, it's so applicable. And the key word here that I want to hone in on is process, right? It's a process.
Oh my
We're
gosh.
not, and part of that process may be just to lay low and do just enough for you to
Yep.
sustain and maintain, right?
Yes.
And I know there must be a lot of external pressure right now. I think we've talked about this as well. There's a lot of pressure because all of a sudden we 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 have so much extra time, right? And the
Yeah.
pressure is on us to be crazy productive, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
grow, develop, read, learn. But the reality is, it's just not practical
Right.
for everybody to
Yeah.
to absorb that extra pressure.
Right.
But one of the things that I want to be very conscious of, because I do articulate this quite often to my own clients and customers, is that there is a fine line between not putting any pressure on yourself at all, but putting on enough so that when you get out of this, you haven't regressed by
Yeah.
months or years, right? Because one of the things I hear often, and you know, you see memes about it and people joke about it. There's this term called the quarantine 15, which is
I
the
know.
assumption that you're gonna be, or not even the assumption, it's the acceptance that you're gonna be 15 pounds heavier when you come out of this.
Yeah, they justify it
And
by
they,
the
yes,
quarantine.
exactly, they justify it. And I really feel like it's a double negative right now because
Yeah.
both on the physical front and the nutrition front. So,
Yeah.
it's talking about the physical front, you know, we do live fairly sedentary lives nowadays, especially compared to our ancestors, right? Who were farming and producing, you
Right.
know, what
Yeah.
have you.
Hmm.
Right, so we work a desk job, and then we come home and we maybe cook dinner, but then we end up on the couch again. But
Yeah.
now you don't even leave your home, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's really that double negative, especially if you don't take on any form of exercise or movement. And then
Right.
on the nutrition side, because you have the extra time, it sounds like a lot of people are taking on baking or what have you, right?
Yeah.
And when I say baking, I'm not talking about consciously healthy baking. We're talking about the, you know,
Yeah. The
comfort
comfort food.
foods and what have you, right? So it really is a double negative. You're moving less and you're eating more and you're eating worse.
Right.
How and where do you personally draw that line between not putting in any pressure on yourself at all and putting on just enough so that you come out of this
Yeah. Well,
okay?
you know what? I'm serious when I say I before all of this, I didn't work out every day, and I still healthy and I eat healthy. I've always eaten healthy, but I made a very like explicit commitment to for myself to walk the talk. So when
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling people, limit your social media news consumption, having a good sleep regime, eating while exercising, I'm doing that too. I'm committed to it, and um, I'm not really. People are learning a lot about me in this session. I'm not really a sweet tooth person. I'm all salty stuff. So the whole
Chips.
baking thing, I'm kind of like meh, whatever. But you put me in front of some nachos and salsa, and oh boy. Um, but I'm same thing. The college is really colluding us to come together and get ready for post pandemic, and so I'm committed to being ready for that. So it's kind of like training for a marathon, that you don't just jump on a treadmill and pound out 6 miles when you haven't been running in months. It's a slow progression, and you add and you add and you add and you add and you add. So I am committed to doing the things I've described to you about my routine in my day every single day, and build and build and build, so that when we do come out on the other side of it, I am ready. I am armored up. I feel strong, and I feel as though I can offer wisdom and insight to people when they're over on the other side of this. So yeah, I guess I because I love my work so much and I'm so committed to people and their mental health, that's where my internal drive comes from. Not everybody has that. I'm very, very aware of it, which is why I love what you said earlier. One day at a time, just like pick one thing or two things that you're going to do healthier today. Or what are you going to do a little bit more of, or what are you going to do a little bit less of? I'm going to not eat 3 cupcakes today. I'm going to have one. I'm going to walk for 20 minutes today instead of not doing anything. So little things like that, and I think that's doable during this time. And again, it's really inviting to engage in some of those unhealthy behaviors, because it's instant gratification. And people, whether we're in a pandemic or not, people love instant gratification. Lots of people really suck at patience, and some of the really wonderful things in life come through hardship and practice and repetition and patience, and that's not easy. And so yeah, I'm probably kind of babbling now, but
No, not at all, not at all. And the distinction that I want to make and I want people to understand is I'm not talking about your weight. I could care less about your weight, right?
yeah, no, it's more about
To a
habits.
degree, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about your health in general,
Yeah,
right? You don't
totally.
want to come out of this. Yeah, we're
Mhm.
naturally many of us are gonna come out of this a little bit heavier than we were coming in, and maybe in general a little bit in worse shape than we were when we came in. But that's okay. But there's a difference between that and completely letting go,
I know.
because both you and I are both fitness professionals as well,
Yeah,
and we know that especially as we age,
yeah,
it's much harder to get back what we lost, or or
totally
or
agree.
or, or get off what we gained or what have you, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's not about, again, it's not about the weight, but if you're not moving, you know what,
yes,
when you come out of this, your muscles are not going to be as conditioned, your joints
right.
going to be more stiff, you're going to be in more pain, and for
Yeah,
you to get out of that I guess that lost progress or that regression is going to take months, if not years. So you've lost
Yeah,
years in these few months that we've been isolated, right? So
yeah,
those are the kinds of things that I want people to be conscious of and
totally.
make their decisions based on.
Yeah, and don't undo the things that they've already done.
100%. A hundred
Yeah.
percent. Um,
Am I allowed to take a sharp right turn?
of course.
Okay, okay, okay. Because this week, what I've been listening to, and the reason why I wanted to come back to what I said earlier, there's a major difference between social distancing, which we all must be doing, and washing our hands,
Mm-hmm.
but and social isolation. So I've been doing my homework, and loneliness is there's a what's her name? I wrote it down. Jillian Holdwestad, and she did research on um, people who are socially connected um, are, let me see what, 50%, 50% less likely to die early when you're socially connected. Another piece that came out of it was, so weak social connections can lead to a significant change in our health, and those included coronary disease, dementia, depression, and a decrease in sleep. So when you put that like big picture here, when we are socially isolating ourselves, we are setting ourselves up for major health deficits long term. So folks, listen to me when I say social distance, yes, we must, but find your people that you need to have in your corner, and it doesn't need to be a lot. You don't need this big huge web. You just need a little nucleus of people in your life that you can talk to, that you can laugh with, that you can share your struggle with. You have to have that. I can't express that enough, especially during this time. We're going to be here for a little while longer, so figure out that piece.
It's unbelievable. I mean, yes, you and I, we do our fair share of harping on social media. That's fair enough.
Yep.
But social media can be good as well, right? It can
Yeah.
give you that social connectedness. There
Yeah.
are some amazing groups on Facebook, for instance. You have to find them, right? And there are great ways. Like, let's assume that an individual doesn't have many family members, or they don't have a huge or a vast social network, many
Yeah.
friends. You can find them, right? It's
Yeah.
just people that are going through things similar to yourself, experiencing the same kind of things, and you're
Yeah.
just sharing. You're not venting, but you're
Yeah.
sharing, right?
Yeah.
Both the present situation, but also the positive outlook that you may have, right? There
Yeah.
is a lot of potential on social media. I think it's being used incorrectly, and I believe you do as well.
Yeah.
But if you use it correctly, it could be a great place, a beautiful place, right?
Totally. Totally. I'm going to share something. I'm going to share a really lovely story about a client of mine who is practicing Muslim. So they're in Ramadan right now, and for 30 days. So I think from now until May 23rd or 24th or something like that. And in Ramadan, they're not allowed to eat from dawn until dusk.
Yeah.
So right now is, I guess, around 4:30 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. But also during that time, and I'm just informing people of this if they didn't know, they're also encouraged to engage in less profanity and being more positive and being more patient and being calmer with their themselves and their people, the people in their lives. And so when my client shared kind of all of those things with me, I thought, wow, we should all be doing that right now. And then we were talking about it a little bit more, and she said, well, after we had talked about it, she sent me an email. She put it on her social media Facebook page in a healthy way to invite other people over the next 30 days, not necessarily fasting per se, but the fasting of those behaviors. And so there's a platform for social media, can be a good thing and can invite some positivity. And I wish so much that people would do more of that. That would, man, that I would. in fact, there's my invitation to people who are listening to this today, tomorrow, and the days and weeks to come, is find a way to make your own social media over there where you're spreading some love and some positivity and some hope into the world, because we all need it. And we could really shift the way that social media is currently or moving forward.
And that in itself actually reinforces a message that I share a lot with the people that I work with and deal with closely. So, specifically to my mentees, I suppose, um, I always encourage them to, if they value our relationship, think about taking on the role of mentor for somebody else.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
and it's fine. A lot of people have that reservation of, oh well, I don't have anything to share. I don't have any influence. Whatever. I believe that everybody has influence or has the power to influence.
mm-hmm. I agree.
When it comes to a mentorship type relationship, it's more about life experiences than it
Yeah.
is about life achievements. And everybody has experience, right?
Yes.
Everybody has gone through bad things in life, and everybody has gotten through them as well.
Yep.
So the sharing of that experience alone is massive.
It's
So
huge.
everybody has the power to influence.
Yeah.
I encourage people to do that
Yeah.
positively.
Totally. I agree 100%. And sometimes I've said to people, when you do something nice for somebody else, it's not a unilateral move. It's bilateral. Like you feel better by making somebody else feel better.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I've been giving that as homework to people, is get out of your own head a little bit, and what can you do for a neighbor, or is there a senior in your community that needs toilet paper or
Yeah.
milk, or you know what I mean. But just finding other ways to help and to um, yeah, just not make it all about you and your world and what you're going through. Pause that a little bit, and focus on how can you make somebody else's day a little bit better. Who needs a phone call that you haven't connected with in a little while? That kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Just one,
powerful.
just one quick final thing here, and it just popped to my mind. So it's a little bit of a deviation, but
Yeah,
very, very relevant, I think. And if this doesn't fall into your realm, feel free to tell me so.
yeah,
But over the span of the past couple of weeks, I've had several people, so definitely more than one or two, um, asking me if I knew why they were waking up in the middle of the night with a rapid heartbeat and feeling like crazy, crazy, like stressed and anxious in the
yeah,
middle of the night.
yeah.
I will chalk it down to your mental health, your mental emotions at the moment.
Definitely.
Can you speak to that? Do you know why that
Yeah,
happens?
I do. So excellent question, and I hope this is helpful for people. Um, we Even now, when we're all, well, for the most part, not quite me yet, working from home, we can feel occupied. Our brains can feel occupied in the day with phone calls, emails, stuff we have to do if you have kids, like in homeschooling and all of that. So, generally speaking, our brains can be distracted throughout the day, and someone can still be experiencing symptoms of anxiety, the physical ones as well as the psychological ones, but not really feeling tuned into them, at least not as much. But I talk about that specific symptom of waking up in the night and of the racing heart and racing thoughts. The whole world is quiet at night. Sun's down, world is sleeping, and that is when anxiety loves to be right there, because now all of those so-called distractions that you had earlier in your day, those are they're done and the world is asleep. And so when people develop that, and there's a few things that I would speak to. I like people to have a journal. Um, these are my anxiety folks that they have beside their bed sometimes. And I'll say, I want you to write out those worry thoughts. So if you wake up in the night and you are feeling that way, write them out. What are you worried about? And there's science behind it. The reason is we're going to externalize some of those worries, and then we're going to close the book, and you're going to put it down, you put it in a drawer. Worry thoughts are literally parked and put away so your brain can try to get back to sleep. And then I teach people diaphragmatic breathing. So diaphragmatic breathing is breathing from your belly, not from your chest. When we feel anxiety, it's all up here, muscle tension upper in your upper back and neck. And so really kind of getting people to, if they're in their bed, doing it while they're laying down, or if they need to get up and get a glass of water, do that. The other thing that I say about these folks who wake up in the night, do not lay in bed for longer than 10 minutes with your anxiety. We can literally change neural pathways in our brain to teach us to be awake when we have anxiety and we stay in bed for too long. It's kind of like Pavlov's dogs and associations. Your brain can develop that association that it's okay for me to stay awake and be here in bed. No, your bedroom is for sleep and for sex. That's it. So if you're laying there and you're feeling that panic for longer than 10 minutes, I usually say get up, go to a different room in your house, grab a glass of water, read something really, I don't want to say boring, but something that's not going to be stimulating. Usually I try to tell people to stay away from their phone because everybody, well, not everybody,
Yeah.
but people need to know that, the light from your phone can really, we have a part of our brain called our nucleus accumbens, and can get that activated, and then you're more awake. So usually trying some of those things, if this is more of a pattern that's going on and you're finding yourself developing insomnia, then call your family physician and have a phone consult or something like that, because sleep is so imperative right now. It's a big deal, and it's a really big deal to be rested, to have good immunity. So sleep is a really strong part of coping well during this time.
I'm so glad that was such a clean definition, and you made a very, very um, concerted effort to quantify, so specifically to the 10 minutes, uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I know for certain there will be people, I would even I would venture to say most people will
yeah,
try to ride it out, right? Okay, yeah,
yeah,
I've woken up in the middle of the night. I'll try
yeah,
to get back to sleep. And they'll lay there for
yeah,
what seems like half an hour or hours until they
yeah,
fall back asleep, right?
totally.
And when you were talking about association, I can totally see that. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I don't mean to drag this out, but this
No, it's okay.
actually elicits another question then. What if you're not waking up in the middle of the night, but you're having nightmares? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
same thing?
Um, yeah, nightmares are, their dreams in general are funny things, and everybody, when people are experiencing increased stress in their life, they often have an increase in dreams and in bad dreams or nightmares. Usually, same thing. If someone wakes up from one, I get them to do that, the same sort of thing of get up, get out of your room, go to a comfortable spot in your house somewhere, and just switch gears, have something to listen to, like a relaxing iPod cast, or your favorite magazine or something like that, but very similar sort of thing, because you can create the same level of association by just staying in your bed and laying there and ruminating over what you just experienced with your nightmare or your dreams.
That's great. That is great information. I think this particular segment is going to be very, very important to share because I
Yeah.
know just by nature of what we're going through, people will be waking up in the middle of the
So
night
for
with cold
sure.
sweats
Yeah.
and
And you
having
know what?
nightmares.
I prescribe people, I call it the hour of power down. So 1 hour before your bedtime, I want you doing things that are very relaxing and calming. So getting into comfortable. It's funny, let me back up and say, what do we do with little kids? go get your jammies on and brush your teeth and maybe have a quick snack or a glass of milk. And then we read stories to them. So we're doing all kinds of things for our kids to get their little brains and their bodies ready for a good night's sleep. But we don't always do that as adults. We think we're just so tired we could just go to bed and hit the pillow and fall asleep. And for lots of people, that doesn't happen. And so I say, get 1 hour before your bedtime where you're doing lots of relaxing things to engage your brain and your body um, in, or to get your brain and your body in a relaxed state, ready for bed the hour later. So for that hour, it could be a nice warm bath or some tea, dim your lights in your house, close your blinds, comfy clothes, read an unstimulating book, or watch a
Stretch,
show.
meditate. Yeah.
Totally. So then by the time you actually crawl into bed, you've given your brain an opportunity to slow down and switch gears too. That sometimes that really can help the midnight stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny because I think in general we have all the answers. We collectively have all the answers because, like you said, how do you communicate with your kids? Okay, it's time to wind down. It's time for
Yeah,
bed.
right.
But do we wind down ourselves? Not necessarily, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Cinder, that was great. I think that was
Awesome.
just chock full of not just knowledge, but good stories and really relatable stories. I think that's what's most important right now,
Yeah.
for people to hear these more positive messages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are being very realistic about the situation,
Yep.
but at the same time acknowledging that there is a certain amount of control that we can take. There are certain things that we can do to get out of this. Not necessarily on top, but
Yeah.
you know, not so far behind, not setting
Yeah.
yourself back months or years when we
Right.
come out of this, right?
Definitely.
And we all have the tools to do so.
Yeah.
Know
And if you
where,
don't have the tools, then figure out which ones
right,
you need and talk to somebody about it.
right.
Definitely.
Um, Nowhere in this episode or any other episode did we talk about investing in this $1,000 program or what have
Oh,
you, right? A, a lot of these things you can do. I would say all of these things you can do for free, right? It's just
yeah.
a conscious, concerted effort,
Yeah.
an awareness. These are all things that can be done. So,
Yeah.
it's the
It's a
rest
big
is
deal.
up to
And
them.
I come back to the power of thought. Be careful what you're thinking about every day. Line up with a little bit more hope and positivity. Try to find a way to say, how am I going to make today a little bit better? How am I going to be a little bit healthier today? Just those small things. And I really want people to know that I'm doing it too. This isn't something that just, comes naturally. I mean, it does a little bit more so now because I've been doing it long enough,
Hmm.
but there was a point in time for me as well that I didn't always have that mindset, but so it's doable if people make it a concerted effort to have a better attitude going forward. This can feel different and can for sure be different. And I really want people to take away from today that some level of positivity and optimism and it, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but find a way to laugh every day. Shit is hard right now, and I get that,
Hmm.
but don't lose your humor and don't lose your playfulness in all of this. Take time to feel scared or to manage some of those big and hard emotions, and if you don't know how, ask and figure that out. But then come on the other side where there's still a lot of greatness out there. It's beautiful out today. It's going
Hmm.
to be a great sunny afternoon. Find a way to be outside and then have a little laugh at some point in your day. Period.
That's it. Things won't be perfect. Make a concerted effort. Do your best, and
Do your
whatever
best.
happens, happens, right? But at least you've
Totally.
done your best. So, Sitter, always,
Yay.
always, always appreciate your time. I really enjoy our conversations.
You
You have
too.
yourself a beautiful Sunday, and we
Yes,
will
you
be in touch
too.
soon.
We'll be in touch.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of My Evolved Life. If you found any value at all, and I know you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button below so you're always notified of new episodes. We'll be releasing a new episode every single week. So until next week, live an evolved life.